Virtue and understanding are essential to right living. Both virtue and understanding are essential to right living, or righteous living. They are needed in meeting the daily problems of life that arise within us, as well as in our relationships with others. We sincerely desire that our standards be correct, but none of us can choose aright unless we are guided by the Holy Spirit. It is hard to know the original cause or the final result of a decision influencing another. We may not know what trial or tribulation may have caused a neighbor to err. If we know, it is because we have ourselves experienced some similar tribulation. It is then that our standards are measured by Him who abides within our holy temple, and they fit perfectly with the ideal within our less fortunate neighbor. We have no cause to find fault or condemn. Virtue and understanding are the requisites for spiritual work. What we do not possess we cannot give. What we do not live we cannot teach others to live. Unless we are pure, how can we expect others to be pure? Our very words and acts condemn us. We must be and know before we can direct, or before we can rightly guide others who are seeking the safe harbor. There is a desire in each of us to live better day by day. We wish to reach a certain goal. If we are choosing the highest, the best, we will not be satisfied with anything less. It is well for us to remember that the highest goal is not reached at a single bound, but step by step, here a little, there a little. It is encouraging to know that no good deed is lost, not even a good intention. But all are built within our very souls and will bear fruits, some 30, some 50 and some 100-fold. It is by deeds, righteous deeds, that we rise. We climb to heaven leaning on the arm of a brother whom we have helped. But to know that ye spoke unkindly and suffered for it, and in the present may correct it by being righteous, that is worth while. What is righteousness? Just being kind, just being noble, just being self-sacrificing. Just being willing to be the hands for the blind, the feet for the lame, these are constructive experiences. In analyzing the urges latent and manifested, we would magnify the virtues and minimize the faults. This, too, should be that lesson of greater importance in the developing mind of this entity. Else the entity, as may be indicated from the character of the experiences, may become self-centered, and this would be to the detriment of the greater development of this entity. Magnify the virtues of all, as ye would have thy God, thy Maker, magnify thy trying, thy attempts to be holy, not righteous. So few can ever attain that, none in the material world, but they can try. All can be holy. That is, dedicating body, mind and purpose. That is being holy. Then, the try may be counted to thee as righteousness. For righteousness is of God. When confronted with difficult situations, how can I be sure the decision I reach is from the light and not my own thinking? As the body recognizes, there is the body-mind, the body consciousness, there is also the inner consciousness or soul-mind. Ask the question in self and the physical mind, so it may be answered yes or no, and in meditation get the answer. Then closing self to physical consciousness, through the meditation, ask the same question. If these agree, go ahead. If these disagree, analyze the own self and see the problem that lies in the way. Should this entity continue along the lines of working with metals, salesmanship, etc., as heretofore? This, as indicated, must be a choice of the entity. In whatever field of activity the entity is persuaded within itself that it is best fitted for the meeting of the material needs and necessities at this time, that field engage in. To say to the entity, you must not sell cans, you must sell steel, or you cannot sell steel. You must sell cans, would indicate that the entity's abilities of self-expression were lacking in its associations, its connections with the source of all truth. Just as all truth, all knowledge, all light, is at the hand of every individual. The application of its truth in the experience of an entity must be a personal application by self. Where there are ideals builded and adhered to, and these placed within those realms of the creative forces that deal with man's experience in the earth, and man's relationship one to another that make for those developments through the continuity of life's force flowing through same, may the entity gain in the present. Either in giving those that come through song or music that may awaken much in the experience of others, but also serving in a manner that keeps self's own ideal first and foremost for self, without inducing or forcing another to see a like vision. Keep self aright. Be true to self and thou wilt not be false to any man. Remember, the creative forces make for a continual development in material and spiritual forces. With this line, as one sees the manifestations of the acts of man in the earth, man claiming God as the Father, the Christ as the elder brother, the patriarchs as teachers and directors, and yet find fault with someone that is less gifted with the light of his love. Suppose, for the moment, that God looked on thine own heart, as thou hast oft looked on thine brother's life? Oblivion, incomparable to the mind even of man, even as space or time. Think on these things. 4. While trials, tribulations, anxieties have been a part of the entity's present experience, we find that despite these, in the face of much opposition at times from the various sources of latent urges, the entity has held to that purpose which brings in the present an experience as of a journey made straight, as a pathway to those with whom the entity has or may come in contact, as a light to many in dark places. Let that light then be kept bright in thy dealings, in thy application of thy abilities in the present. That there may come those admonitions from the great power in man's consciousness of the closer walk with him. This should be the purpose, the desire of each and every soul. And this entity's activities might indeed be a living example for those who would seek to know their way with their fellow man, in filling those purposes of magnifying the glory of a living God in the experiences of man. Thus there may be kept before the entity an awareness of the activities. Thus may the entity in self, as it deals with or comes in relationships to problems and associations with others, have an ideal. And thus may such a drawing become a helpful influence. From its experiences, oft does the entity in its quieter moments find the need of the strong arm to lean upon, yet falters in giving such in the hand of that is mortal or less than ideal. Yet often looks for the ideal in the material. As has been seen, only the ideal may be in the spiritual. By what power or powers were these early pyramids and temples constructed? By the lifting forces of those gases that are being used gradually in the present civilization, and by the fine work or activities of those versed in that pertaining to the source from which all power comes. For, as long as there remains those pure in body, in mind, in activity, to the law of the one God, there is the continued resource for meeting the needs, or for commanding the elements and their activities in the supply of that necessary in such relations. Ye may not give to others that ye do not possess thyself. The ability to accomplish, the ability to attain to whatever is chosen as thine ideal, in spirit, in mind, in fact, lives within self. The entity itself must apply these. Be intense, yes. Be consistent, sure. Be ye perfect, yes, even as ye desire that others be. But leave much of the results with him, in time, in space, if ye would learn the patience as ye gained there, by those trials of others upon thy efforts. In what way can I handle the mother-in-law situation, so that our married life will be governed by ourselves? That's the trouble too often, self, to handle. But so live rather thine own life that there are no question marks as to thy purpose, as to thy intent toward her son, and no questions of problem. Thus may the situations, the conditions that arise often such be that thy own conscience does not condemn thee. Then ye are able to look every man, every woman in the face and say, the Lord forgive thee, the Lord bless thee. What have I come in to work out during this life period? Thy inconsistencies, at times. Thy lack of the sufficient amount of give and take. Or, to be what I would wish others to be. He that has been faithful over a few things may be made ruler over many. Faint not because of disappointment. Rather use even failures as stepping stones for gaining the greater vision of the light. The light that makes the path straight. Walk, then, in the light that is set by self as the ideal. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. Ye will be enjoined one to the other. Keep thine counsel in many things. Be a good listener and an excellent worker. Turn again first to those principles latent deep within thee in spiritual things. First find thyself. Analyze the ideals. Know in what direction ye would go, and with what spirit thy purposes are prompted, that it may bring fame or fortune, or that ye may be highly spoken of in certain circles, that ye may gratify thy own vanity, that ye may add to those things. Do ye say to thyself, yes, when I have attained, I will give this or that or the other? If you don't give yourself, though you make but 50 cents a day, though you feel that you would give so bountifully if you were a millionaire, you wouldn't do a thing if you had a couple of million. This is fooling yourself. Ye are fooling yourself and planning what ye would do when ye attain. Do it now. Begin. For the individual soul entity grows in grace. You don't hop off a ladder up on the upper boughs. You grow, you climb up. You grow to that. It unfolds, it develops with the character, with the purpose, with the ideal of the entity.